Welcome to the Journey to Mastery. This is a program about 7 steps to building a people-first, high-performance culture. The type of place where people actually can do their best work, which is hard, which is like climbing a mountain, and live their best lives, which, as it turns out, is also hard, like climbing a mountain. But so often we think we can't really live our best life until we're maybe done working. And that is a huge mistake that is hurting us. It's hurting our organizations. And ultimately, it's going to hurt the people that we serve. If I haven't met you, I'm Travis Daumert, Senior Vice President of Talent at One Digital. If you're not familiar with us, well, our whole focus is on helping employers take care of their people, creating places where we improve the lives of millions by helping them do their very best work and live their best lives. My personal journey? Well, maybe not so conventional. I actually started out in engineering, but I've had a number of experiences working in healthcare and ultimately learning that we're all actually in the exact same business, the people business. That success in any given business is not just about tools and technology or processes. It is about attracting and retaining, fully engaging and tapping into the hearts and minds of people. And I did get a chance for a while, about 5 years, to study soldiers and athletes for insights into how do you get a human being to achieve more of their potential? How do you help them grow? How do you get them to do hard things every day? Things that most people don't really want to do. Well, it turns out we are largely a product of the people we spend the most time with. I mean, that might sound like a bumper sticker, but the reality, it bears that out. Actually, in studying soldiers and athletes who go into the workplace, a lot of them have a tendency to regress back to average. What's different? Well, it's not them. It's the environment. Who sets the environment? The leaders. So today, most of my work is focused on how do we develop leaders to create great cultures that will attract, retain, and engage top talent. What we're going to accomplish in this very short little video series is a few things. One, I want to equip you, regardless of where you sit, to be able to quantify the headwinds facing the talent markets. You think, well, isn't that an HR challenge? It's way too big for HR to handle on their own. This is something every single leader needs to know. We're going to talk about making a case for building a specific type of culture. If your organization is not really intent on focusing on people and performance, it may cost you everything. We need to address some of the obstacles that stand in the way of developing our leaders and our people. And that's why in the end, I'm going to introduce you to something called the Journey to Mastery. 7 steps that will predictably help your people lean into each other, do more of their best work, and live their best lives at the same time. All right, where do we begin? Well, we typically begin with the tension that most leaders feel today. If you're in a growing organization, you absolutely feel this, but regardless, you probably sometimes feel stuck between the needs of your people and the needs of the organization. Does that sound familiar? We're trying to keep our people happy so they stay and they don't burn out, and we're also trying to make sure that we deliver the results that are expected of us. These two things are in conflict. Every time we try to push up whatever it is, some sort of output, whether it's sales or number of patients we serve or number of widgets we crank out, we're telling people who barely survived last year, well, last year wasn't good enough. We need more from you. That unfortunately can mean that the more we try to do, the more we put pressure on burnout. A lot of leaders want to make investments in our people. We want to equip them with better pay and training and benefits to take care of them. We're trying to hold on to them, and we call those things people investments. Well, our financials suggest those are expenses. Rarely do the investments that we make in people ever show up on the balance sheet. Now, it's not to say they're not wise. It's not to say they won't deliver long-term financial benefits, and we should be making people investments. But in the short term, it puts pressure on financials. And I want to help leaders get out of feeling so stuck in the middle. What's the answer? Flip the script. I'm going to tell you not to focus so much on trying to keep all your people happy, but instead focus on helping your people achieve results, and you're going to make the organization happy. And I think there's some good data to suggest this is true. Now, first, why is this such a big deal? Well, if you haven't heard of it, there is something called the War for Talent. Now, this originally was a book. It was produced over 20 years ago. A lot of people are just still now becoming aware of the War for Talent. How did McKinsey know over 20 years ago that we'd start having real tight labor markets and talent shortages? Well, pretty easy. They looked at demographics. Demographics, well, their destiny. One of the things you can look at for any given country is their population pyramid. You slice and dice a given population by gender and age, and you see a shape that, well, it's supposed to look like a pyramid. It usually does. where you typically have the most babies, and unfortunately, due to life circumstances, you lose people along the way, and you end up with fewer and fewer older people. Well, ours got inverted, and they noticed this first. In 1980, the boomers started having their kids, and they weren't having as many babies as their parents did. Even though that next generation was just a little bit bigger, they basically barely replaced themselves. By 2000, they'd all had their kids, and you saw essentially flatness. And then what had set in was having fewer kids. So now those people have fewer kids, and well, we start to have this thing get inverted. Turns out it was worse than McKinsey thought. So 20 years later, they didn't really know that beyond demographics, we would have issues with immigration, technology would not keep pace with the level of growth we expect in our economy, and that labor force participation would be a big issue. If you haven't read this, I believe every leader, certainly every HR person, needs to be familiar with the demographic drought. It's a little ebook. You can download a free copy. But it introduced a new concept after the pandemic called the Sansdemic, a world without people in it. And this is going to be really difficult on economies. Now, they did recently update this work. They released a new one called The Rising Storm. It goes into more detail. It's more current. And it basically says this highly disruptive period in our labor markets is happening. And the silver tsunami says, we've got 11,000 people turning 65 every day. But guess what? They're not all still working up till 65. The average retirement age is actually 61. Even though some people are working into their 80s, huge parts of our population are deciding not to work and just be consumers. Well, what services are they consuming? A lot of them need health care. And that is a real challenge. We've also lost whole segments of our population, or at least our labor force, to addiction and incarceration. There are complete mismatches between where AI is coming along and helping us relieve some labor market shortages and what we actually need. A lot of our parents and grandparents, told us to all go to college. And, well, a lot of those jobs are the ones getting disrupted with technology. We need more nurses. We need more welders. We need more construction workers. We need people who are doing hands-on work that maybe AI is not going to be quite so quick to replace. What else is going on in this economy for talent? Well, there's a lot of demand. If you take a look at a study that we've done over the last couple of years, talking to business leaders from thousands of companies, the average company we've spoken to is not trying to peg their business growth to GDP of 2%. They're trying to hit double-digit growth, and for that, they need double-digit headcount. They're also having to overcome double-digit turnover. How about you? Where you work, do you expect to grow? Do you expect to need more people on your team? And do you have turnover? Most people do. The eventual turnover is 100%. It's just a matter of how many are leaving this year. When you do the math, the average or a small to mid-sized company that we looked at needed 26% more people. Where are those people going to come from? Unfortunately, not natural growth in the labor market. If we take a look at this 60 to 70 years of data, it suggests, well, GDP growth is coming down, population growth is coming down, but the number that everybody needs to know, not just HR, every leader needs to know, the labor force is not growing. It's pegged at about 0.4% is the expectation for the next decade. That's as far out as the Bureau of Labor Statistics forecasts. Other people are saying this could be this way for the next 3 or 4 generations. Until we get people wanting to have more kids, we're not going to have increases in the supply of workers. And there's only so much that technology can do. So what have we done in the past? Well, we've looked elsewhere. But here's the thing. These other continents aren't growing. If we look at Asia, as big as it has stalled. In fact, the slowest birth rates in the world can be found in Asia. In Korea, they're having 0.7 kids per couple. That math means their population is actually going to go away. They're experiencing some major shrinkage in the next 50 years. Europe, their population pyramid is inverted. Latin America has inverted. The U.S. is flat. Where have we gone for nurses? We've gone to the Philippines. And even though I shrunk it down to be sort of representative of the size of their population, guess what? They're flat too, and they've got their own older people to take care of. The Philippines has a nursing shortage. And meanwhile, countries like England and the United States, we're coming for those trained English-speaking licensed nurses because we need them. they're not necessarily going to be there for us. In fact, there is only one continent in the whole world that has positive population growth. It's Africa, where the average age is under 20 years old. But Africa has its own challenges. So this is not something that's going to be easily solved. And if we look at where this leads, rising wages, we're going to have mismatches of what we have and what we need. Technology is displacing some people, but we need other types of people. And so as much as we see fighting and challenges in Washington, I don't think that's where the answer lies. The answer lies in us. It lies in our leaders. If you want to become an organization that doesn't just exist, it thrives, it attracts and retains talent, it becomes a destination workplace, which I will argue is the only type of culture you should be focused on building. You've got to become a destination employer today because the war for talent is intensifying. The key is attractive leaders. And what makes a leader attractive? They cannot be stressed out of their mind. They need to be somebody who is actually doing some of their very best work, growing, applying their skills, and purpose-driven. And they actually need to like their life. I think one of the reasons that we have young people leaving jobs so quickly is they're going to places and they're not seeing anybody they want to be like. What's that going to take? It's going to take courage. It's going to take putting up some flexible boundaries in your life where you figure out, how do I lean in and lean back out? How do I learn how to thrive even though I can't remove all the stress from my life? How do I learn to lead well? Again, I argue it's going to take doing best work and learning how to live our best lives. The problems are not just in Washington, and we should not be focused on, what they're going to say or do that's going to fix or break it. The biggest issue is in the minds of our people. You've probably heard of the Sunday Scaries. Maybe you've even had them. What happens the night before people go back to work? Well, for a lot of people, it's a feeling of impending doom. It is dread. And the answers aren't so great. You can go out there and search for the Sunday Scaries and see what you find out. There's a podcast about it. There's suggestions like, oh, hey, maybe you ought to put on your happy playlist. Maybe you ought to buy a sweatshirt and get some Sunday Scary swag. They don't actually talk about fixing it. And what happens when people get stressed? Well, not healthy things. The average person is binging on something. They're binging on TV, they're binging on food and alcohol, and they're binging on weed. This is not really healthy behavior. In fact, there might be one healthy behavior in this binge cycle. There are some people who exercise more when they get stressed. That's good. Do that. There's some good evidence to suggest we need it. But mental health is going the wrong direction. I think this is a headline you already know, but when we came through the pandemic, we assumed that the incidence of mental health would go back to normal, and instead, it's gone straight up. So when we look around, the average person is hurting. About 25% of people are in a mental health crisis. If you've been in a meeting lately where there are more than 4 people, one of them is in crisis. This is happening everywhere. And what's it look like when you look broadly at the workplace? Well, Gallup would say, it looks like people aren't super engaged. Employee engagement is trending down. But I'd say back up. When was it great? In the last 25 years. Employee engagement's never been great. At most, about 30% of people are engaged. About 17 to 20% are so mad that they go to work to make things worse. Then the rest are just, it's a job. Is it any surprise that over half of Americans are interested in another job? Now, this could be very scary if you're one that's thinking, we've got to attract and retain talent. We've got to be able to take care of our customers or our patients or whoever our members or stakeholders are. Pause. If there is a war for talent and you're trying to figure out, okay, the labor market's not growing, how are we going to find people to work here? Half of America is actually looking for a better job. This is why you need to be a destination employer. This is why when people hear about your organization and they find out what it's like to work here, they find out their bosses actually care about them. If you can get that to happen, you've achieved one of the 2 primary things that Gallup would tell you makes for a good manager. They care about me as a person, and they actually want to set me up for success. These are the only 2 real jobs of the leader. Maybe as a manager, you've got to manage some processes and some technology, but as a leader, help people feel cared for, help them be set up for success. The common word in this is for. This is a primary leadership paradigm. If your leaders are working from the paradigm of this is what I need from you. I need you to show up on time. Why? Because I need the work that you do. I need your hands and feet in the building. You're missing it. Why do you need them to show up on time? Because you care about them, because you want them thriving, because you want them succeeding at work. We have got to embrace what we want for our people because they can tell the difference. And if we don't figure out how to do this, the turnover will continue. You're going to have worse than that. The consequences of constant turnover, brain drain, exhausted people, stressed out people, well, it impacts patients or whoever your customers are, whoever you serve. Your culture is going to drift toward mediocrity, towards survivalism. And unfortunately, your leaders are going to get bogged down in just firefighting. And that may already be happening where you work. What would it look like to have the opposite? Actually, people energized by coming to work. People who understand their own role and the purpose of what they do, they understand what other people do and they lean into it. Where your leaders understand our job is to help people be successful. Our people's job is to help take care of whoever our customer is. Ultimately, they start to lean into each other. They start to address conflict more productively. Issues get surfaced and resolved quickly. They start to find honesty and candor because they care about each other. You're building not just a culture, you're building a system that will consistently grow people and help them be successful. This is what we need to do. The question of where to start? It's with our leaders. And a lot of our leaders don't even feel like they deserve it. They're like, I went to college. I've got a good job. I maybe make enough money to keep ahead of my bills. Yeah, but you're still probably stressed out. If you're like the average leader, we need you actually doing your best work and living your best life. We need you living out the example that we're trying to set for other younger people who are coming into the workplace and telling their friends. Now, how do you do this? Well, I'll pick that up in the next video.